Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what is, without a doubt, one of history's absolute most daring corporate heists. We're going to unpack exactly how a trusted financial giant, one praised by world leaders, trusted by top investors, and relied upon by millions, managed to totally pull the wool over the entire world's eyes. Okay, let's dive into this. $28 billion. At its absolute peak, that was the valuation of Wirecard. I mean, just picture a company so massively powerful, so supposedly untouchable, that it wasn't just competing with those legendary century-old banks. It was actually outgrowing them. They completely dominated the stock market, looking like the undisputed future of global finance, while processing transactions for millions of people every single day. The world saw an unstoppable juggernaut that could do no wrong. But then, the music stops. $0. That's the devastating reality hiding right behind the curtain. Out of that massive $28 billion empire, a staggering $2 billion of their actual physical cash was a complete ghost. I mean, it literally just did not exist. Total fabrication. And when that ghost cash was finally exposed, well, it led to the ultimate, unprecedented vaporization of the entire company's worth. So how did a massive illusion like this actually take shape? Let's trace it back.
To really understand this lie, we've got to look at how this empire was built. Back in 2000, Wirecard was really just a struggling tech company in a quiet German suburb. But then came 2005, and the major pivot. A new CEO, Markus Braun, steps in. He didn't just want a tech startup, he wanted to be the absolute king of cashless payments. And he found a huge open door, right? In early internet days, traditional banks were terrified of processing payments for high-risk businesses, things like online gambling and adult entertainment. Wirecard saw that fear and totally capitalized on it. They stepped in, processed the cash when literally no one else would, and raked in massive fees. It was basically a gold rush. They expanded globally, bought up smaller tech companies, and by 2018, they hit the ultimate milestone, officially replacing a traditional bank in Germany's top stock index, the DAX. They were the undisputed pride of European tech. But that brings us to the absolute most baffling part of this whole story. How do you fake billions of dollars without anyone noticing? Like, how does a publicly traded, heavily regulated company just invent billions out of thin air while the whole world is watching? Let's get into the actual mechanics of this illusion. The secret here really comes down to something called third-party acquirers. Wirecard claimed that a massive chunk of their skyrocketing revenue came from Asian markets. But instead of actually processing these payments themselves, they used shadow partner companies in foreign markets, specifically places like Dubai, Singapore, and the Philippines. Wirecard claimed these tiny, sometimes literally abandoned-looking overseas offices were processing huge volumes of payments for them. Every single quarter, these shadow companies would report fabricated transactions. Wirecard would then take those completely fake numbers, type them directly into their official corporate balance sheets in Germany, and show the world just how spectacularly rich they were getting. And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the deception. On one hand, you've got Wirecard's official balance sheets rocketing upwards, painting this beautiful picture of explosive revenue and unparalleled financial health. But on the other hand, you have their actual physical cash vaults, which were entirely empty. To explain this away, Wirecard simply told the world, oh, those billions of dollars aren't in Germany, they're being safely held in trust accounts inside two major banks in the Philippines. And on paper, everything looked perfectly balanced.
It all boils down to one incredibly basic question the world somehow completely forgot to ask. Do you actually have the money? I mean, the auditors, these highly paid professionals whose entire job is to verify financial truth, they looked at the paperwork, checked their boxes, signed off, and walked away. No one bothered to actually pick up the phone, call those banks in the Philippines, and just verify the funds. It was the perfect corporate illusion, maintained simply because highly educated people trusted the documents they were handed. Wild, right? So, let's move into the next phase, the whistleblowers and the spy game. Every illusion has its breaking point, and for Wirecard, it started in 2019. Financial Times investigative journalist McCrum started digging, all based on highly confidential tips from some incredibly brave whistleblowers inside the company who knew those massive Asian numbers were totally fabricated. Now, a normal company facing false allegations would just open their books and prove the journalists wrong, right?
not Wirecard. They went to war against investigative journalists and whistleblowers. Their retaliation tactics were incredibly aggressive. They hired ex-Secret Service agents, they used illegal surveillance to physically follow and spy on journalists in the streets, and they launched massive short-selling attacks against their critics in the market. They weren't defending their accounting, they were actively trying to destroy anyone who dared to ask a question.
And here is the ultimate irony of this whole saga. Instead of investigating Wirecard's highly suspicious behavior, German financial regulators actually protected the company. They banned investors from betting against Wirecard's stock. And even more shockingly, they launched criminal investigations against the journalists who were just trying to expose the truth. The very regulatory system designed to protect the public had been completely manipulated into protecting the fraud.
But the clock was ticking. The lie had just grown too big. By June 2020, extreme pressure finally mounts on the auditors to definitively prove the cash actually existed. In a total last-ditch effort, representatives board flights and fly all the way to the Philippines. This was it, the ultimate showdown. Physical verification of the mythical $2 billion was officially demanded.
And what did they find? Well, the Philippine banks looked at the auditors and simply stated, "We have no record of this company." Just a cold, hard slap to the face. The banks officially confirmed they had never held any money for Wirecard. All those documents Wirecard had confidently handed out to the world for years, complete and utter forgeries. The $2 billion never existed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer, terrifying speed of the collapse. It's almost unprecedented. Less than 48 hours after Wirecard confessed to the world that its cash was a total myth, the stock market went into absolute panic. We're talking a catastrophic 99% drop. Over $20 billion of market value just vanished into thin air overnight.
So what actually happened to the men pulling the strings? Well, CEO Markus Braun resigned and was promptly arrested. But the chief operating officer, Marsalek, the alleged mastermind behind the actual operational lie, he took a much more cinematic route. He completely erased his digital footprint, reportedly hopped on a private jet, and vanished into Russia. Today, he remains one of the world's most wanted fugitives, literally living in hiding under a false identity. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to remember this. The greatest illusions aren't performed on stages by magicians. They're built right inside corporate boardrooms. The Wirecard scandal isn't just some story about fake numbers on a spreadsheet. It is terrifying proof that if you make a lie big enough and complex enough, the world will willingly close its eyes to it. It really makes you wonder, what other massive illusions are operating right now, hiding in plain sight? Thanks for joining me to unpack this and keep questioning what you see.